Hi, everybody. Welcome to the new normal. I'm your host, Lisa Davis, aka Litecoin Lisa. Today, Dr. McDaniel is here to tell us why plant synthesized nutrients are optimal for our optimal health, are important for our optimal health. I'll let him tell you about it instead of me right after this. Welcome back, Dr. McDaniel. I gave it a try with the title, but I think I messed up a little bit. Can you clarify what we're going to talk about today about the micronutrition that we can find in New Eden?
Well, I first started these lecture series with the intent to try to communicate with our national population that, much like me and everyone else, we have been indoctrinated that if you've got a health problem, whether it's physically, mental, or emotional, we got a drug for it. And unfortunately, if it's in patent, that is extremely expensive. And I always tell people anytime you get a prescription from a physician, ask if there's something that the drug chains can have that's generic, that's the equivalent, because the generic has come off of patent and small companies bid to do it, but it has about a 20-year period that it's effective and it's safe. So that is much safer than any new prescription drug that is extremely expensive. And recently on Sunday morning on CBS, I have to tell you, it made me angry. They had a segment on postpartum depression that some mothers have. They commit suicide. Sometimes they kill their babies. Sometimes they kill all their children. They are so depressed, and they've got a new drug for it. They announce on this, and finally they say, for about 2 weeks, it's only $10,000. That is
Wow.
horrible when you think of a young couple,
Yeah.
childbearing age, and be struck with this. And that my wife's also a physician, and you see advertised on the thing about a new drug for hepatitis C. Well, I find out it's nearly $50,000 for 3 months. And who can afford this? No individual, no family, no uh, health group. And then the intent of these lectures now has been widened a little because the World Health Organization has identified some islands and isolated peninsulas where the population is not high, and French fried franchises, which
Right.
a big population, have not invaded them. And like on the island of Sardinia, just west of Italy, they say that people are living very much like in Roman times. And they're one of the blue zones. And what we mean by blue zones is people live to their 90s and over 100 in good health. And so there's longevity and quality of life in these blue zones. Well, you don't have to move to a isolated peninsula or island to get some of the benefit of all these blue zones that the World Health Organization has recognized. And incidentally, National Geographic, which is credited as being the largest journal in print, particularly the segments in it and also the pictures on planet Earth. And they've had 2 issues on the blue zones. And Loma Linda, California, just southeast of the Los Angeles area, is not an isolated peninsula or an island, and they have virtually all the benefits of the blue zones, which starts with a plant based diet, very highly plant. Now, nearly all of them have some meat of some kind, particularly fish and shellfish, but even other types of fish, but not a common thing. And in fact, it's more like the Ornish diet of Cleveland Clinic, where he gives you a 1 day a week vacation. You can eat anything you want to, but 6 days of the week, you have a plant based diet. Well, that's one of the things that we can accomplish by adding New Eden to your diet. Also, you need to combine with this a common denominator of all these areas is daily exercise. Unfortunately, in these islands and peninsulas, they don't have sometimes electricity and all the conveniences that take away labor that we used to have. And so you need diet and exercise, and then they add to that a healthy lifestyle, avoiding practices that are deleterious to life. And a big one there is smoking and abusing excess alcohol and exchanging fluids with other people in intimate relationships, and also having a purpose in life. So the lifestyles and the purpose in life, all of these things are choices that you can implement in your life wherever you live to add New Eden to your diet, which is really enriches the plant nutrient things. And today, the presentation, if you look on the label of New Eden, it'll have about 14 different plants. But the number one is aloe. And you say that there is aloe mannin in there, the very important bioactive molecule. But with the new processing, are in excess of 200 additional micronutrients made in the plant gel that previous processing got rid of, that are included. And this gives you more robust response to your diet, because there's a lot of power in a broadly based diet. And in addition, always add to people, not only should you add this to the diet, but in choices, you should add different types of nuts, different types of berries, fruits and vegetables, and that the frozen, or if you've got your own garden, pardon me, uh, these have more nutrients in them because of the green harvest. And what do we mean by the green harvest? When I was a kid in the 1940s, it was most of the stores were owned by a local family, and they didn't have things to in their market more than about 50 miles from the location, 100 at the most. But today we have national market chains, and agribusiness provides something that we didn't have when I was a kid, which was only during the 4 to 6 weeks of a growing season. Now you can have watermelon and all kinds of melons year round, raspberries, strawberries, blueberries, you name them all. And how do they do this? They go along with the uh, growth cycles across the country, and they pick the produce green before the genes in the plant put the nutrient molecules into the produce, so that you can have a shipping life and shelf life, but you're getting it before these nutrients are put in there. That is an amazing thing, that in the animal kingdom, and humans being in that our genes require certain nutrients in cellular synthesis to hook together to make bioactive compounds that run the biochemistry and physiology of life. Well, we take plant ripened fruits and vegetables, freeze dry them to a powder and grind them up, and they're in New Eden. And you get these molecules that you don't get from what appears to be fresh fruits and vegetables in the market. But actually, the frozen ones or fresh canned have more nutrients in them, because you wouldn't buy them again if it didn't taste good. And these nutrients that are good, that our genes call for, are in plant matured produce. So this is going into molecules that are being proven to be in plants that are very important. And I want to emphasize that, because, as I said, the aloe has over 200 nutrients in it. And so let's go to the first slide. Now, in the plants synthesized nutrients are vital for optimal health. And a common characteristic of the blue zones is there's a high amount of plant-based food that are consumed in the diet. And you don't need to move to a blue zone to realize the good health and longevity benefits, which in these inflationary times is important, because a family that has a member that has to go to the doctor regularly, It's a real a threat to the family's finances. And if you have to go in the hospital, that can take a lifetime to pay the bill. And if you spend any time in ICU, you can't live long enough to pay for the time there. Well, what can you do to have the benefits of a blue zone? Well, as I say, the proof is in Loma Linda, California, that you don't have to be on an isolated island or peninsula. It's right in an area of a lot of people, but these people follow guidance religiously with the Adventist church that focuses primarily on Daniel 1 in the Bible, where King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon wanted the young, robust Jewish boys to be in his service. And he said, "Come eat at the king's table with all the finest wines and foods from the kingdom and all." And they said, "No, all we want is water and fruits and vegetables." And he says, "Oh, we want you to have the best." And this is all in Daniel 1. And they do a little study and they find out that this is the secret of the young Jewish men. And of course, that's what the Adventists adhere to. And that's what's a common denominator of all the blue zones: diet, some kind of exercise. And of course, in the blue zones, they do it in their daily work of either farming, gardening, fishing, hunting, following flocks. But today, you have to do some exercises, walking around the block. As they say, if you do equivalent of 3 or 4 miles walking, you can make up for the benefits. And this is a choice that you can make to have the benefits of the blue zone. Now, these are the things that have a more healthy longevity also in your lifestyles. Now, our first slide is of a compound that is present in fruits and vegetables called quercetin. And the reason we do this because the one ingredient, though it's in the seeds there in New Eden, is in the cherries are high in quercetin, and you can see it's a what's called a flavonol of the classifications of different nutrients, and you see the structure of it there. And over to the right, we have the phenol structure, which is the circle of carbon atoms with OH, like half of water added, OH. And you have at least three uh, polyphenol, it's called, compound of quercetin. And this is in these plants that we will get into. That's not listed on the ingredients to New Eden, but it's in present in the plants that are there. And we go to the second slide. And this is interesting because I could give you over and over again since about 1980. There is a chart very much like this for the carbohydrates that are in the aloe, the principal ingredient in New Eden. But this is the number of scientific papers published in various journals. And you can see in the year 1980, there were only about 32 studies on quercetin. Well, this shape of this curve is very true for multiple ingredients that are vital that our cells call for in cellular synthesis that are needed to hook together to make the bioactive compounds that run the biochemistry and the physiology of life. So this in the year 2022, there were over 2,600 papers published that year. And this is a trend of more and more science and medicine is recognizing the power of more comprehensive nutrition to prevent diseases and to restore health. And that was in the preamble to the dietary supplement law of 1994, of why they even considered this legislation. However, as a constitutional attorney informed me, this is not part of the law. It's just why the legislation was considered, because in the labeling section of the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, called DSHEA, it states, and I paraphrase, that only an FDA approved pharmaceutical drug can represent or claim to treat, cure, mitigate, or correct an abnormal health condition. That's the law, and you can't break it. A company that I was medical director for had people breaking this, and they paid a $10 million fine. So you don't want to break this. But this is a change that's going about, that optimal nutrition supporting the engineering and design of life that is coded in the DNA or the chromosomes of our genes is very powerful. In fact, is more powerful than any pharmaceutical drug, that rather than supporting the engineering and design of life through nutrition, drugs interfere with the engineering and design of life to suppress or reduce symptoms. And an ideal drug, if you go back, if you quit taking it, your symptoms come back. So let's go to the next slide. This is the natural sources of quercetin, and one of the best sources is apples. And I find that, though it's not a high source of quercetin, it's a pleasant source of everything. It's probably the reason that has been around for a long time. An apple a day keeps the doctor away, you've heard. Well, that's a good way, an easy way, an economical way to get your quercetin, which is used in cellular synthesis. Well, in the cherries, we have a good source in New Eden, but if in your choice of food, my wife very frequently puts blueberry muffins on the table, because blueberries have up to 14 milligrams per 100 grams of berries. And you can see that the dark grapes, red onions, raw broccoli. A lot of people use the broccoli heads in dips with crackers and cheese. Then the kale and all the cruciferous vegetables, the cabbage, the turnips, the radishes, all have a little bite due to the sulfur molecule in there that binds to toxic molecules. And then the highest source of quercetin is in capers. Well, I had wondered, what are capers? Well, I went on the web and found out it is flower buds. And this has 365 milligrams. And as you know, this is used probably as a with certain, primarily salmon. You'll have capers there, but they are loaded with quercetin. And then dill, and then as a seed, the fact is nearly all seeds of plants have some quercetin, but buckwheat is high. And then green tea, that's very commonly taken now, has some quercetin in it. And the next slide shows some of the health benefits of quercetin. And it supports the immune system. We see there is the number one thing. If you'll give me the next slide.
Sorry.
Yeah. Then it's if you've got inflammation in your body, which contributes to aging and reduced quality of life, it balances the cytokine production of an inflammatory process cascade. It fosters viability in healthy cells, and in fact, it's what's called a senolytic. And a senolytic is a nutrient that causes old age senescent cells to be removed, and for a new stem cell from your bone marrow to migrate in and replace it with this process called apoptosis, programmed cell death and renewal, with stem cells from your bone marrow that differentiate, just like in the embryo, to become the cell that the stem cell replaces. Also, the quercetin helps maintain a normal range of blood pressure, and particularly beets are known for this. And these quercetins support a healthy blood glucose levels. And I think of the ancient grandmothers and mothers thing as saying, eat your fruits and vegetables, is an
Mhm.
old adage when that's where you get your quetracin.
I had
Now,
no idea.
this next slide is a optimized diet, which they estimate that if you're 60 years old, it'll add about 8 years least if starting at this time, and 8 years in women, and 8.8 years in men if you reduce or quit smoking, excess drinking. And over to the right, you see the green arrows going up of things to emphasize in your daily diet choices, to eat more legumes, more whole grains, more nuts. Different types of nuts have different nutrients in them, more fish, more fruit, and more vegetables. And then things that you want to reduce. And am big on, don't try to go totally vegan or vegetarian. That I think
Yeah.
Cleveland diet with Dr. Ornish is more practical, because actually uh, animals concentrate some molecules that are extremely low in the plant kingdom, but you want to reduce the amount of red meat you eat. You want to really avoid processed meats, avoid sweetened drinks with any type of glucose or near glucose, refined grains, and don't overeat eggs. And I particularly don't like that, as it has reduced eggs. But there's one thing in the human equation, is balance. It is not healthy to go all out on anything. That you ought to have a little bit of a lot of things is healthy. And so you should have some eggs, because there's everything in an egg for a new chicken that's going to be
Right.
born, a new generation, but don't overdo it. And that's one of the things you can say about this choice in your daily diet, that you should be balanced and not overdo it with anything. So let's go to the next slide. And I was not aware that until in November that the journal Life Extension has a full page on the two carbon short carbon chain of taurine amino acid. And if you in that figure, if you'll notice, the dark gray balls is two carbon atoms in the lower image, and you see the little white balls are the hydrogen molecules. The yellow is the sulfur, and the red ones are the oxygen. And this is a very important amino acid that we will get into in more details, because apparently in metabolism, this can be used in many different ways. And the NH3 there in the top sign, and you see it down there at
Mhm.
the bottom where there's the blue nitrogen, that NH3 is what causes it to be an amino acid.
Okay.
This is very important to have in your diet. And this Life Extension magazine said this is so important that the National Animal Aging Laboratory in Arkansas has used this with their models for aging. And they start with a special worm called egalans, and they know the average lifespan of them. And you add this into their diet, and they live longer. And then they go to fruit flies, and they know how long they'll usually ask. And if you put this into their diet, they live longer. And then the next thing they do is they have mice that they know, and rats that they know how long their lifespans are. And if they've been before showing increased life, that the mice and the rats live longer. And then they can go from that to cats and dogs. And if you've got the money, fact is, through a contact at the medical school in Arkansas, I made a presentation to about 25 people in this laboratory. And I thought in the very early stages of our research on the active ingredient from the aloe that they would leap to the chance to do some research on it. Well, I thought they would spend federal money to do this. And they said, we'll do it if you come up with the money. Well, I couldn't come up with the money, so that research hasn't been done on the active ingredient from the aloe yet. But we have other evidence that it has some of the same benefits that this toluene amino acid. Let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
Here are the natural sources of toluene. It's highest in shellfish, particularly scallops, mussels, oysters, and clams. And in an animal, heart is the highest source. And we don't eat a lot of hearts, but I'll make a comment on that in a minute. But
Okay.
you'll find toluene in beef, milk, eggs, algae, and even seaweed. If you go to Japanese restaurants, they have a salad there made with seaweed. It's very green. Well, it has toluene in it. And that liver is a good source of toluene, particularly beef and pork liver. And it's interesting that it was a surprise to me that chicken livers have significantly more toluene in them than either pork or beef livers. And I frequently tell people if they're going to try the Ornish diet of 6 days of vegetarian type eating, and on the day that they have their holiday, that eating beef liver or poached salmon is very important because, as you notice, the next thing is that tuna fish, salmon, cod, and freshwater fish all contain significant toluene. So these are things that are very common into the blue zones that the World Health Organization has noted. And at this point, I was surprised on my cell phone that a lecture came on from a retired veterinarian in New York named Marty Goldstein. And lo and behold, he was touting his dog chow, that dogs, if you feed them this and start when they're young, will have twice the lifespan. Also, cats, because one of the things he has in his thing is he uses heart from they're not, that's not a common thing you find in the market, but every animal that is sacrificed for food has a heart. Well, he has in his dog food heart, kidney, and liver. And he talks about all the benefits. And by the time I got through listening to it, he hit the central theme of all my efforts in these lectures about the importance and the power of more comprehensive nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things you have to be careful with is that cooking destroys toluene.
I was just going to
remember from the lecture we gave you on Pottinger's cats.
That's right.
40% of what the cats ate were raw, that they did not develop the diseases associated with the disabilities of aging. So this may be part of the reason that that he found in his cat colonies that 40% of what they ate needed to be raw. And so you don't want to overcook anything that you're doing, and don't burn it to a crisp. But that's an important thing, as I said in the journal that came out in November, that toluene seems to be a amino acid that is very active in longevity and increased quality of life as you age. So the next slide, please. Now, one of the things you see over again is that the National Animal Aging Laboratory in Arkansas, that the egalican worms live 10 to 23% longer. That's the first thing they start with, that the fruit flies live longer than the controls, that the mice given toluene, that the average lifespan of mice is 20 months, and that they live 25% longer, up to 50 to 70 months by adding toluene in their diet. And of course, this is what the veterinarian was touting his formula for pets was saying just the exact thing. Also, they went with this taurine to monkeys, and monkeys live to be about 12 years old, and that's the equivalent of about 45, 50 years in humans, and they live longer. And so taurine is an amino acid that's affordable, it's practical, available, and in your general diet, which I keep stressing variety, and I mentioned those things there. And this variety, I think of the mothers and grandmothers' wisdom that I've heard all my life.
Mm-hmm.
If you eat different colored fruits and vegetables and grains and maintain, you'll have good health. And that's kind of what we're stressing in this lecture. Let's go to the next slide. Now, actually included in the formula for New Eden is inositol and IP6. And the inositol and that P stands for phosphate, that it says has 6 phosphates on it. Well, this is the molecular structure of inositol, that it has an OH, where you see the red balls, that's carbon, and the uh, uh, H's are the little gray ones, and the blue are the oxygen. Now, go to the next slide, which is closely related to
Okay.
the inositol. You see that a phosphate molecule, PO4, can be added to it, and it becomes inositol phosphate 6. And we have 6 phosphates everywhere there was alcohol, and those phosphates also attract calcium molecules and magnesium molecules in close association. So in the fluids of the cell, you have the inositol, the IP6, and the calcium and the phosphate all in the fluid together uh, for the cell metabolism. And this is very beneficial, and this is actually put into New Eden for these benefits that come from this molecule. If you look at the structure of the monosaccharides, you'll find you've got this central carbon circle. And here we have these phosphate things, because it's not generally known, but none of the monosaccharides or sugars can be used in cellular metabolism and cellular synthesis until a phosphate molecule is added to the sugar. And this is a source of phosphates for all the carbohydrates that are used in the metabolism that is essential in the body. And I might add that to make antibodies, the selectivity of the antibody is the different sugars that have essentially the same molecular structure, but the atoms are in different positions. And I used as an example that a sugar cannot be added in metabolism until it's lifted to a higher energy level, which the phosphate molecule adds. And it's kind of like when you hook up to a trailer, a two-wheel trailer, you have to raise the tongue up a little higher than the ball and then let it down on the ball to hook it to your pickup or your car. Well, to get these sugars active into metabolism, you have to phosphorylate it to reduce it to, or elevate it to a little different higher energy level so that it can hook to something else. In this inositol, magnesium, calcium, IP6 complex that is in the cell that is provided for in these molecules are put into New Eden to facilitate this metabolism. Now let's go to the next slide, which is important, and looks a little busy, but what it's attempting to do is to show that the metabolism that occurs inside the cell as the glucose is converted to fructose, and you have to have energy from adenosine triphosphate, 4 energy units. And with magnesium, it goes to ADPT. So it's from you have one of those phosphates added to the glucose to make glucose 6 phosphate. Then it can be converted to fructose 6 phosphate. And all of this is in a milieu inside the cell. And the putting into the dietary supplement, the inositol, the calcium, the magnesium, and the IP6 facilitates the metabolism of the carbohydrates with the amino acids and fatty acids. And that's an important step that it may not be apparent, but this, though we just mentioned this, that it's in the New Eden to allow a effort to reproduce some of the benefits of the type of diet that the blue zones have. Let's go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
Here we show how inside the cell that the inositol and the IP6 and with the calcium and magnesium get inside the cell, and the 6 phosphates drop down to 3 because 3 PO4 phosphate molecules were bound to the sugars to allow them to be used in the metabolism within the cell. And so there's an equilibrium of all these different molecules going back and forth. You see the arrows go one way and then on the other way. All of this is going back and forth to support the metabolism within the cell. Next slide, please. Now, these complex is an antioxidant. And what we mean by that is that free radicals, which are particularly generated by the mitochondria in every cell, and also in our environment, we have chemicals, even cleaners in the home can have oxidative cleaning compound that we absorb by breathing. If we can smell them, and it's absorbed through the lungs into the bloodstream, or if we touch it with our skin, that's very important that the animal, as a human, requires these plant molecules to bind to free radicals to keep them from attaching to. And I frequently hold up 2 bar magnets in my hand, and everyone knows how these bar magnets, you can see them clowing to each other, where a negative goes to a positive and a positive goes to negative. Well, these molecules of nutrients are the same way, and the mitochondria produce free radicals just like one of these things, and the nutrients provide a molecule to come in and bind it like this so that it doesn't attach to the membranes within the cell, or particularly to the DNA, which are the instructions of life that are coded in the genes. And the molecules that can attach the free radicals alter the function of membranes and can alter the instructions that are in the DNA. And the altering of the instructions of DNA is called a mutation. And you have to have mutations to alter the function of the cells that they become malignant. And that's how cancers come about. And so these molecules are very important in the plant kingdom to bind to free radicals to keep oxidation from happening, and to prevent malignancies, and to prevent diabetic neuropathies, the birth defects, and particularly neural tube defects called spina bifida primarily, and also the fatty liver syndrome, which is all too common in our modern population with not having a broad diet and having these nutrient molecules that we have present in New Eden to keep you from getting the fatty liver syndrome. Also, people that tend to be poorly nourished and not have a broad diet are more tend to depression and to panic disorders. Also, seizures are higher in these people. And then that OCD stands for oppositional compulsive disorder, particularly seeing children and young people that just revolt against parental authority in anything in the school. And you can improve their nutrition, and they no longer are pests and don't have to be in special education and are not considered problem children. Also, these molecules that we're talking about decrease the cholesterol or the fatty molecules deposits in the arteries that lead to atherosclerosis, which is the process that leads to heart attacks, strokes, and amputation of extremities like the toes, the feet, the legs. And we're finding out that, as we saw with the toluene, it's these molecules in the plants are prevent premature aging. And more, and I showed you the graph of the increased benefits that of papers being published as science and medicine continues to show that the biblical guidance that are in Daniel 1 have a basis. And in fact, in the ancient scriptures, it has that the fruits and vegetables are food for man in the Old Testament. Then it ends with the leaves of the trees shall be for, depending on the translation, either medication or drugs or for better health. And that's repeated in the New Testament in Revelation, where it talks about the water flows beneath the throne in the temple of the Holy of Holies out across into the rivers and creeks and goes to the orchards and gardens, and they produce every month. And it ends with the words, and the leaves of the trees shall be for the healing of the nations. So you got to go a long way to be ahead of 5,000 years ago and 2,000 years ago, approximately, that the value of broad nutrition is very beneficial because it supports the engineering and design of life that is coded in DNA and our genes that controls cellular synthesis, which is the assembly of nutrient molecules to make the biochemical compounds that carry out the biochemistry and the physiology of life. Next slide, please. The natural sources of inositol and IP6 are in seeds primarily, but the source for what is in New Eden comes from the bran of making white rice from brown rice. And though it's a lower percentage, there's an awful lot of rice that is eaten that is white rice, and an awful lot of brown rice made from the bran. And also you'll see there that sesame seeds and corn seeds and wheat seeds are higher in the IP6 and in isotal. And then you also see it in green beans, peanuts, sunflower seeds, soybeans, English peas, and oats. So in your diet, you should think of these things to be in the broad expanse of the general diet. And of course, we get a concentrated source of this by adding New Eden to your diet, which I say is in the bulk container, a little plastic half a teaspoon measuring thing there is one of these with each meal adds these molecules that we're talking about that we don't even put on the label, but they're within the ingredients that are listed on the label. Next slide, please. So we summarize this again saying you don't have to move to the blue zones that National Geographic, which has the reputation of being the most published photographic and word document on the planet has had two issues praising the benefits of the blue zones that the World Health Organization has identified. And I tried to point out you don't have to move there to get some of these benefits if you will have a broad choice in your general diet and add these molecules that are chosen to be in New Eden, which when we look at particularly the American diet, we don't tend to eat, say, cruciferous vegetables because they have a bite, and the bite comes from the sulfur molecule, which is very desirable because it binds to heavy metals and toxic molecules to detoxify the body. And we just don't eat a lot of turnips and cabbage and kale and radishes like some of the other populations, but we add that and the powder of New Eden. And that what we're doing is providing nutritional units that tend to be low in the American diet to support cellular synthesis for the assembly of bioactive molecules that it's in the code of life in the DNA. And one of the things that I recognized early in this research that I have been in now for 38 years, starting in 1985, is recognizing that lo and behold, nutrient molecules are placed in the plants that the animal kingdom, including man, require in the code of the DNA, the code of life, to assemble bioactive compounds that carry out the process of life. And one of the other things that's so incredible about this DNA code is it can take molecules that have absolutely none of the properties of life, but when you get them hooked together, lo and behold, life occurs. And of course, the DNA is a code in nucleic acids that is, I would say, between 10 and 100 times more powerful than the code that's in your cell phone or your slate or your desktop computer. Next slide, please. Or is that the last slide?
We've got one more, the final summary.
Well, as I say, when you really step back and look at all these details of the life process, you over and over again come up with a question of how did this come to be? And as I have said, that one of the things, this started out as a middle of the road basic science with the Food and Drug Administration of trying to make a new drug from the active ingredient, the bioactive ingredient from the gel of the aloe vera plant. And eventually we found out that there was synergism when you added other molecules that are low in the usual diet of the American diet, and that in the plant kingdom are the molecules that in the animal kingdom that this DNA code calls for. And the question arises, how did this come to be? And as I've said, this middle of the road scientific endeavor started 38 years ago, has turned into what I would call a spiritual adventure. In that, to answer that question, how did this come to be? That there is unquestionably a creative, organizing, and designing power active in the universe for responsible for these realities. And over again, you come to this, like I was mentioning, the mitochondria create free radicals that can be destructive inside the cell, all to the way to creating cancer. Well, lo and behold, in the genes, there are the programs to make glutathione and superoxide dismutase from nutrient molecules that, like the two magnets I had in my hand, grab these free radicals to keep them from binding to the membranes within the cell and around the cell, and to keep them from binding to the DNA. You have to ask, how in the world did this come to be? And there is no question in my mind that there is a creative organizing and designing power active, and its evidence in the cell metabolism and the code that is in DNA. And so that's the end of this lecture of trying to give some specifics of the compounds that science of the modern day is finding out that is present in these nutrient molecules that we just mentioned, the plant source of what is in the plant source. Well, I've given you three important molecules that are active in the metabolism of the cell.
Absolutely. And if anybody has any questions, I know you're always open to sending information to them. You have years of studies and that you've done on this, and groups that you've had use the product, and you can send them information. They can email you at rmcdaniel@wellnessquest.org, and get more information that way. You can also go to the website wellnessquest.org and get more information that way as well. And that's also how you can place your order for the best way to do it is to do a 6-month auto ship. You get the biggest discount that way, and you get a free supply of probiotic that way as well.
Well, if you contact me at that web address, as I've said before, and make specific questions or ask for our information that we have on how nutrition improves brain function. Well, it's one of the biggest files I have, and also one on how it improves athletic performance, and also a group of files about the benefits combined with any treatment for malignancy, how nutrition, a Mayo trained oncologist found out that the combination of nutrition for the normal cells and let the oncologist attack the abnormal cell population with their chemotherapy, that we are providing nutrition for the biggest population of cells, which have written in the code of DNA how to search for, attack, and destroy abnormal cells as well as infectious agents. And I've got all of this, and I'll respond if you will contact me happily.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. McDaniel. I appreciate you again. Have a great day. And we'll see you guys back here tomorrow with Johnny Litecoin. Have a great day.